everybody, it's meteorologist Joe Chaffee on this Friday, and since the weather in the east is quiet and we have a major storm that's coming in to the western part of the United States, but particularly for southwestern California, this is going to be one of the strongest storms to hit here in the last 6 years, and it continues to break the drought, and there's a very, very strong low that's heading toward or just south of San Francisco. And what's happening is part of the energy, well, a couple of things. Part of the energy with this low will be dropping southeastward down to southernmost California. So we're talking about problems going all the way down to San Diego and even further south than that to the Mexican side and the Baja Peninsula. But this system has what really sets this apart is that normally we get these lows that come across the Pacific and they go up to the Pacific Northwest. That's not unusual. And I guess if you want to give a range of track, they would be somewhere in this box, okay? And I will assume that the arrow is the midpoint. Well, this one is tracking significantly further south than what storms normally do, and as a result, you've got this tremendous tropical feed of moisture that's coming up from deep in the tropics. And you got to understand that this is roughly, I'm going to try to draw this at an angle here. So you're talking about 25 degrees north. So the subtropics start at about 25-30 degrees north latitude. So you have the subtropics here, and there's a deep tropical feed of moisture that's being pulled up. So as a result, and you can see how the cloud cover just expands like crazy here. The cold cloud tops pouring right into Southern California. So the northernmost part of the state, you go north of San Francisco, there'll be some rain out of this, but it's not going to be that bad. So it's basically from just north of the San Francisco Bay Area all the way down to San Diego. So we'll look at, there is a slew of warnings. When you look at the National Weather Service's websites and you see all the different warnings that are up. Now, this enhanced data display from the Weather Service only takes the most outstanding warning and shows it. And in this instance, it's got the high wind warnings that are up from San Diego all the way up the coast. And in the mountains, we have winter storm warnings up, although the snow levels are going to be a bit on the high side. But you can already see as the storm approaches that we got these gusts now to gale force, and we'll roll it up the coast here. Sustained winds of 35. Here's some inland gusts. In the mountains, the higher terrain, you're going to get some strong gusts too. It's a gust of 61. I'm not sure what point that is, exactly that is. It looks it's an elevated area. I'm almost certain of that. That's west of Salina. I'm sorry, east of Salina. And here's another one gusting to 55, 45 knots from a buoy offshore. And now we're up into the San Francisco Bay Area where it's every bit of 20 to 30 on land. And you can see also for the inland areas in California, you've got winter storm warnings up. Also, by the way, because of the rainfall that's going to occur, numerous flood watches up and down the coast. The high surf advisories, gale warnings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you get the idea that this is a powerhouse that's coming in. And in fact, the latest model runs have actually strengthened the storm even more from what it was showing yesterday. It's almost a good 10 millibars lower in pressure. This is a very wrapped up low. And the low never really comes inland on the NAM. And you can see what happens. You get this arm of rain. Look at that feeder on the NAM that goes all the way down south of 25 degrees north. And the heavy rains sweeping inland today for California already started. And the low itself just basically comes to a grinding halt just to the just to the west of San Francisco. And then you see how it drops southward right along the coast. I mean, that's it does weaken as that occurs. Probably the model weakens it faster than it will, but certainly the implications here are that this is a real powerhouse that is going to affect southwestern California. Let's show the rainfall. And the thing is, you don't get these storms in California. It's not like the East where you get storms on a regular basis. These are unusual events particularly as you go further south, even during their rainy season. Then you go for months and months and months with really not too much happening. So to see something like this is significant. And by the way, you can see where the snow areas are, well inland with regards to this. And then we look at let's look at the rainfall. And I'm going to just say that in my opinion, the models are underdoing this. It's showing some 4-inch plus amounts in and around the Los Angeles area, north or south of that, lesser as you go north, but every bit of 2 inches up and down the coast with some 4-inch amounts. And again, bear in mind that's a different terrain. You can get storms here in the east that put down 2 to 3 inches of rain and most of the time, unless the rain is falling on already soaked ground, it doesn't really cause a huge problem. It's absorbed. Out there, it's a lot different, especially given the bone dry conditions that they've had. Now, what are the implications with this storm as far as the weather goes in the eastern part of the United States? Well, that's a good question, because eventually everything that comes in the west winds up moving into the east. And I am going to now shift our focus of attention to the rest of the country. And you can see, actually, this storm that's coming into the southwest really doesn't carry its power all the way across to the east because of the big ridge of high pressure that's in the eastern states. It's weakening the system as it moves eastward. We have another big storm coming into the west on Monday into Tuesday, and here's another system that comes in just north of San Francisco. Now, this one here has energy that's going to hold together, and I think what's going to happen is that we're going to get a storm that's going to try and form in the Central Rockies, and as we go into later next week, and cooler air is going to start building down into the eastern states. We also have a Gulf low, which is a rare event. That part of the energy from the system that comes into the southwest is probably going to be spent on a little Gulf low that develops, but that goes so far south. I mean, wow, it practically moves over southernmost Florida and heads off the southeast coast. By the way, for those of you who are in Florida next week, because I know this is a big vacation week with a lot of schools closed up here, going down to Florida. The beginning of the week looks okay. I mean, although a little bit on the breezy side with that high to the north. It's not going to be the most ideal weather, though, because especially when we get into Wednesday and Thursday, and maybe even into Wednesday and Thursday of next week, and maybe into Friday, into Thursday night into Friday, it doesn't look especially good for the entire state of Florida with that low where it is. Now, here's this low coming out of the Central Rockies. So it looks like some snow for Wyoming, South Dakota, into parts of Colorado. Although, the track of this has been varying from run to run. Some of the model runs yesterday got very blocky for some reason. I'm not sure why. Now, I again am not sold on the idea of a very deep low here going into the western lakes. I mean, I suppose that makes the most sense, but we've been down this road before. This is for next weekend. And what the model does basically is that it strengthens the low, it occludes out. In other words, it just reaches its peak intensity and then begins to weaken. And then as it does so, a new low forms off the coast of Virginia and then runs up northeastward. I don't know, there's something about it that just doesn't look, I mean, it makes sense to me that it wants to do that, but I'm not 100% sure that this is how it's going to play out. I've been stating the fact that I believe that we are going to see a couple of more chances for snow during the first part of March. It would make sense to me, given the kind of winter we've had, which has basically been, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So we're in a 2-week off period right now. So one more flip to 2 weeks on would make the most sense. Here we have another storm coming out. Regardless of the snow angle, I do see, at least for the start of March, it's going to be a very stormy period, active period across the United States. It seems like weather models want to key in with one storm after another starting late next week. Now, where and how these storms play out remain to be seen. And by the way, I did receive I not crazy about comments like this. I did receive a message on my Facebook page. Somebody expressing a meteorological opinion with basically no meteorology behind it and all politics. Please spare me because I'm not interested. You want to, what he essentially said to me was, um, uh, he disagreed with my view that there would be, a flip back to and maybe a couple of chances in early March, which I don't see as a very controversial statement. Okay, told me that that he thought I was wrong about it and that global warming is here to stay. And my response to it, thanks for sharing your opinion with me, and thanks especially for making it a political one. That's you want, and I've said, you want to express a disagreement, give me the meteorology behind it, and I'll look at it, and certainly we'll argue back and forth if I disagree. That's one thing, but please don't make blanket political statements. You're wasting your time with me, okay? Because I'm just not interested. All right, so I've ended my once a video pontification. Okay, so you can watch how the upper air just kind of streams in system after system. And one of the things that I saw today was that this really reminded me of what happened at the end of January, the very beginning of February, in terms of the upper air changing back to a slightly colder, stormier look. And this is what I think the models are doing. I don't know if I don't know that the specifics are actually credible, but in terms of where it has surface lows and that sort of thing. But the overall look to me kind of looks like how it was back in late December, early January, late December, early February, where we had this sort of temporary flip, and it's doing it again. By the way, I do want to address one comment made on YouTube. I'm sorry, I think it was Angela who made this comment yesterday. She actually asked a really good question. Why? She was looking at some of the predictions with regards to this winter going in, that it might be a repeat of 13, 14, 14, 15, based on a number of factors, including the Siberian snow cover growth, among other things, and why it didn't happen. Well, looking at it, I think what wound up happening in terms of the atmosphere is that the way it's set up, all the real polar air wound up because of how the upper air in the stratosphere. And I'll be honest, I don't have a clear understanding yet of how all that works, but basically, the displacement of cold air wound up going to Siberia and Europe, rather than spreading down on the other side. I guess there were two options. Either the polar vortex was going to park itself in Siberia, Europe, or park itself in Canada and in central Canada and draw the cold air southward in the United States. Or the other option is that the vortex were to split in half, where some of it, half of it moved southward into the U.S. and half of it moved southward into Siberia and Europe. And that the model showed that the models were showing that in the long range numerous times over the winter time, and in almost every instance it never happened. The only time it happened was back at the end of November, and when it did, it was so temporary. But it was when we got a couple of cold shots in the early part of December, and again in the early part of January, that lasted a very short period of time. So it's just that basically the upper air just didn't line up right for a consistent cold and snowy winter in the east. So we'll leave it at this for the time being. I'll be putting up videos all weekend long. It's a holiday weekend here in the east, and the weather is going to be really nice right through. By the way, if you're skiing, boy, what a ski weekend you're going to have, because not only do you have a ton of snow on the ground up in central and northern New England and in upstate New York, ski conditions are outrageously good, but in terms of the weather itself, it's just going to be nice. It's not going to be all that cold. It's actually going to be reasonably mild, but not too mild up in ski country right through the weekend and into early next week, right through Monday. No weather issues at all. So enjoy your holiday weekend. Temperatures down in this area here are going to be in the 50s to near 60 the next 2 days, and that's a good thing. So thank you for being here on my YouTube channel. If you're new, please subscribe. The subscription is free, and you'll get notified when new videos come up. I want to give a big welcome to any of you who are from the West. Okay, every lot of you people from the West tell me that you don't see very much of this being done on YouTube or on the internet. There's not a lot of attention paid to the West, and I think one of my own subscribers made a very good point. The vast number of people in the West live in the concentrated population centers of Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, and Portland, San Diego, and where most of the active weather, Seattle and Portland get active weather more so, but when you go into California, most of the active weather is in the mountains and to the west, where there are fewer people, and therefore there seems to be less interest. But you know what? Spread the word. Share this with your Western friends that there's somebody out there that pays attention to weather in the West. For those of you who ask about my cat, Kovu, I don't know where he is, because usually when I start talking, he's running around. But this is also normally his nap time, so that's probably more important to him than this. All right, so everybody have a great day. Subscribe to my forecasts on my app, 99 cents a month for New York, New Jersey, Long Island, Connecticut, Hudson Valley, and Eastern Pennsylvania. And of course, you can go to my website anytime at meteorologistjoechaffee.com.